I'm going to attempt to really kind of get down to the philosophical uh, details of why we need to have a shutdown of our businesses. Uh, what is the purpose of government, and what is acceptable as far as risks, and what our personal responsibilities are, and what it's a very complicated issue, and I want to kind of start off with just kind of a historical timeline of events relating to the COVID-19 pandemic. So what happened was China failed to notify the rest of the world that they were having an epidemic. By the time we found out, uh, Italy and New York City had their own little pet epidemics, which became a pandemic once it gets across the ocean. I suppose I don't know what the word exactly means, but that's what it basically means. And so that happened in New York City, and then it spread through the rest of the world and in Italy. And so by the time we found out about it, it had already been full blown. And so what happened was uh, the announcements came that there was a pandemic by the World Health Organization, a global pandemic, and then the United States CDC and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Blix or whatever her name is, those people, they started to say that um, because we have such a big outbreak, they needed to have a work shutdown, a lockdown, because the hospitals were going to be understaffed and overwhelmed with with large numbers of cases, and he said that there could be up to 1 million deaths or something like that, and his estimates of deaths uh, were way overblown, and he chose to err on the side of scaring people, to put it politely. Imagine what the amount of responsibility you have, and you're scaring people intentionally. That's messed up. Okay, we need the people have a right to have the truth. Okay, we don't have a right to be manipulated like that. But anyway, I'm getting into kind of political things, and it is political, but I want to get philosophical about it because we need to decide what kind of government we want to have. Okay, and I remember the episode of Alien. I think it was the first Alien movie. It was an episode, the first Alien movie, and the alien. I mean, the robot that was supposed to, the artificial intelligence that was supposed to help these people, ended up trying to kill these people off, and things like that. And then when they finally got where they were able to get this guy, where he couldn't do anything, he was just sitting there. It's a really interesting scene, by the way. Um, Kind of gross, but an interesting scene. Anyway, his last things he said was, "I was programmed to save the ship at all costs." And they said, "Oh, that's why you did all this." And he says, "Yeah, I was programmed to do that." So in the next episodes, the the robot was programmed to save the lives of the people on the crew at all costs. And now what I'm seeing is that saving lives at all cost is crazy. Um, our philosophical view of life. Well, let me put it this way. I don't want to use the word life. I want to use the word death. Okay, our philosophical view on the word on death is that it's not accepted in our society. That we can't accept that people get sick and die. That is has to be avoided at all costs, and that is inevitable. That people are going to get sick and going to die. It's also inevitable that something is eventually going to kill all of us. We're all going to die. Uh, so what are we trying to do? What is our goal? Uh, there are several noble things you could say, like, let's protect the children from dying because we don't want the children to not be able to live a full life. But what about people that are older? Should we just kill off older people because they've had a life? You know, Those are kind of things you need to ask. And the bottom line is you've got to have some kind of a balance. And so the goal was that the original goal of flattening the curve and shutting down all the businesses was because there was a state of emergency. And what a state of emergency does, and this is something that I want to discuss, because I don't think we should ever have any state of emergency again. What we need to have is a voluntary system. We should never have a government telling us to do anything that is a violation of our civil rights ever. That's my point of view, that this was the final test, that governments can abuse a state of emergency in order to suppress human civil rights. And that's wrong. And what my thing is, they're using death to justify taking away our rights. What they're saying is if one person dies because we're free to do whatever we want to do, to go to a restaurant or go, if one person dies, it's our fault because we did not follow these rules that violate our civil rights. And so we are the ones that are guilty of doing something and killing people, when in fact it is not true. It's the virus that did this. The virus that's killing people, and it's sickness and death. And neither sickness or death are something that are a new thing or anything that we have not accepted in our society. We know that people get sick and death all the time. We want to prevent people from getting sick. And the reason what we do is we voluntarily don't show up to work if we're sick. We voluntarily cover our mouths when we're coughing. We voluntarily wash our hands. We voluntarily wear a face mask if we deem it necessary to do so. If we're coughing, you can put on a face mask if you're at the doctor's office or if you're around other people. That is called common sense. And that's what most people have. 90% of the people are law-abiding citizens. And they're volunteers. They're people that want the better good of society. And so my philosophy is, why not leave these decisions up to the people and only have the government advise us what to do and give us recommendations on what to do, and let society decide what they're going to do as a result of this. And the reason why I'm saying this is because right now we've lost our civil rights. I don't believe that we're ever going to recover from this. I think that we need to just get a new government, really. First of all, this didn't start with COVID-19. This started a long time before COVID-19. It actually started hundreds of years ago. We fought a war against people that were tyrants. And we have fought wars since then for our freedom. We fought the Civil War for the freedom of slaves, of the black slaves, which is for all men, no slavery for all men. And we fought wars against communism and against Nazism. And the Nazis were tyrants, dictators that would tell people what to do. They violated their civil rights. They killed off people. Genocide. China, Russia committed mass genocide. Read your dang history books, not the ones that are polluted by communists that have infiltrated America, but the ones that are actual older books that are true and accurate history that show that the Chinese and the Russians killed millions of people. And they're violent right now, currently are violating human rights. Right now, you don't have freedom of speech or any of those rights, or freedom of religion or any of those rights you have. You don't have any rights. Okay, see, this is the thing. You either have rights and your government respects them, or you don't. There's no in between. The government just doesn't sort of respect your rights. They either do or they don't. And if they don't respect your rights, they're tyrants and they need to be getting rid of by whatever means necessary. Because if you lose your freedom, you lose your life. The government can kill you. They can do anything they want. You don't have any right. You don't have a right to even breathe air that you're surrounded by. You don't have any rights. That's what the whole point of this. It's not about the freedom. Oh, I want the freedom to go and have cigarettes, or I want to have the freedom to go watch a movie, or I want the freedom to go to a restaurant. That's not what this is about. This is about our basic fundamental right And if the government doesn't respect your civil rights, it's not a government, it's a tyranny, it's a criminal institution. And that's the government that we've got right now. I can prove it over and over to you right now. Our government has been criminally violating human rights. They have no respect for human rights. It goes all the way up to Donald Trump. He does not understand the Constitution. He never has quoted it, I don't think. He has mentioned all these decisions are being, these very important decisions. Think about how important these decisions are about our health and our deaths and this virus. All these important decisions. Did Trump ever say, I have to take in consideration the Constitution of the United States of America? Or did Dr. Fauci say that? Hey, you politicians should take in consideration our civil rights. Has the Governor Gavin Newsom said, you know what, I've looked at the civil rights issues and I've looked at the Constitution, and it looks like it's okay for me to dictate laws that are not even passed by Congress. And Trump declared a national state emergency. Did he ever consider if that's even constitutional to declare a state of national emergency and to force businesses to make things under the War Powers Act? All these things, are they constitutional? See, it doesn't mean even the Constitution itself, they can change that. They have changed it. It's destroyed. They've already destroyed the Constitution. So the Constitution isn't even really part of this. That's why I'm saying let's start from the basic. The basics is human rights. That's what it is. And if your human rights are not being respected by the government, then you're going to lose all your rights. It doesn't just kind of, sort of. It will eventually result in a tyranny like China or Russia. I guarantee you. We've read the history books. We've seen history over and over. History does repeat itself if it's not learned. That's the key. If we don't, that's why we have history, is so we can learn from history. And we see from history that people take over governments because there's a lot of power and money to be had. We see a lot of narcissistic, egotistical people, including Donald Trump, taking positions of power. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to vote for Trump. He's obviously way better than Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden, you want to talk about violating human rights? My God. I mean, where do I start? He can't even respect anybody's safe, what do you call that? Your personal space. He's got his freaking hands all over your hair and his face in your ear. A guy, he's doing it out in public. You think some jackass like that is going to respect your rights? Absolutely not. And then he's got sexual harassment accusations against him already, which are probably true, but I don't like that when people come up with an accusation way late. She was pro Biden, and all of a sudden now she decides she's going to come out and be big about this. This is disgusting. And so back to the subject at hand is we got to make a decision what kind of government we got to have. And the Constitution is merely an agreement between the people and the government, and the people that are in power are the ones that made the Constitution, not the people. The people in power did that, but when they created our original Constitution, they had great respect for our rights because they had just now won a war against England, against the British Empire and King George. And King George was trying to take away our guns. King George was doing all the same thing that they're doing now. Taxation without representation. They tax us and tax us, but they don't do anything in return. They just want more money. They just gobble up that money, and then they want more and more and more. And now we're in trillions and trillions. We've already spent $3 trillion on the coronavirus because we took away people's jobs and said, well, we can always just put you on the government dole. That's disgusting. And it's not America. And so I want to go back to the whole minutia, I guess, of this whole thing, like back to the historical perspective of this. So when they originally took away our rights under the guise of a state of emergency, they completely overstepped that. First of all, they went too long with it, way too long. They should have only done it at the very littlest amount you could get away with, like 3 weeks or something, so that you had enough time for the doctors to get prepared, to get the ventilators, to know more about the virus, because it was new, because it was a big outbreak. But they did that. They extended it too long. The rules don't make any. These rules are unconstitutional. They're dictated arbitrarily without any debate or discussion at all, and no continuing debate. In other words, if you're going to come, let's just say that I'm the governor of California, and they say, hey, there's a virus and it's going to kill 100% of everybody that gets it, and it's super highly contagious. It has an incubation period of 6 months where nobody shows any sign. They're going around infecting everybody. 90% of our population is going to die from this virus. And I'm the governor of California, right? And so I go, doctors, what am I going to do? And the doctor says, you need to first declare a state of emergency, and then you need to impose executive orders, and you need to tell everybody to shelter in place until we find out how to get this under control. Okay, so that's what they're telling me to do. Well, first thing I'm going to do is look at the Constitution and say, do I have power to do this? If I don't have power to do this, you simply don't do it. So I look in the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution that I know of. Maybe there is. I haven't, it's not like I'm a constitutional scholar. I've read it, but not every day I'm reading a thing. It's a lot of stuff in there. But unless there's a part of there that says you can declare a state of emergency, I think you can declare a state of war or something. So anyway, you look in there and you say, well, there's not really anything Constitution that says state of emergency. So you go, okay, well, we're still in an emergency. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, I advise everybody to stop working, to go stay at home, don't go outside, wear a mask, only go outside when it's absolutely necessary. You can actually have food delivered to you. Let's just have food delivered to everybody, and let's just spend government money on this. Let's raise money for this. And so I do that, and then I just do that, and that's it. That's that. I said it. I dictated this law. Well, actually, I was saying I wasn't going to dictate a law, but let's say I did dictate the law. There should be an ongoing congressional debate in Congress as to if we should continue to support the governor in his actions. There has to be checks and balances. There's none. There's none going on. They're just letting him go. There's no debate going on. So it should be, and I'm going to make this decision, if I'm given those powers by our Constitution, it says, yes, I can declare a state of emergency, and I can tell people what to do. I can tell them to rub their head and rub their belly and pat their head. Everybody has to do that. Okay, so I can do that. Well, there should still be some kind of checks and balance where the Congress should be able to say, he's crazy. Why is he telling people to do that? That's not even very good counsel. Or as new information comes in, they go, hey, man, that was a stupid move, man. We got to back this up. Well, they're not even doing that. There's no way for Congress to override the executive orders. See what I'm saying? It's crazy. The only thing we have is the Supreme Court to stop us, or the President of the United States that could do some things. But the Supreme Court is really that bottom line. The court system is the bottom line, and the real bottom line is civil disobedience. And now oh my goodness, Casey, are you promoting civil disobedience? You are so horrible. Well, have you heard of, what's her name? Rosie Parks? She refused to go to the back of the bus. How many people during the civil rights movement protested peacefully under the guidance of Martin Luther King, God bless him, who prevented a race war in America, I think. And he told his people, he said, hey, we can have peaceful civil disobedience, do peacefully complying with all the laws. That means social distancing or whatever we want, but we need to do it peacefully. Now you can't even do that in some states. They said even if you plan a protest, you can get arrested. That's tyranny, plain and simple. And so the original reason why we had this whole thing, this state of emergency, was because we had uh, an emergency where we didn't know how many people were going to get killed by this virus, and we didn't know if we're going to overwhelm our medical system. So I remember that curve. There's a flat in the curve. Remember, it's still a curve. It's still going to have people dying and people getting sick. And this is the CDC's own number, okay, not my own idea, okay? There's always going to be people are going to get this disease and get infected. It's just spreading it out over time so that when it reaches its peak, it's not higher than the level of what our systems can handle. And they predicted that it was going to go way higher than that with what Donald Trump was doing. And then they said, if we don't do anything, it's going to go way up here and then come down like that. Okay. Well, the thing about flattening the curve is you lengthen the duration of it. It's just so silly. You lengthen the duration of the disease. If you had not done anything, it would have been terrible. I agree, because you would have had a ton of people in the hospital dying and no real treatment ideas. So what we had by flattening the curve, by delaying this disease, is we had a way for us to come up with solutions, get numbers, get a grip on the numbers, figure out how bad the virus is, staff the hospitals correctly, train them for treatment, diagnosis, figure out how to get testing, get more testing done, all these things. And that's why Trump was going along with this whole thing. He would always say, when we get the testing out, we should go back to work. When we do this, once we get this in place, we can go to the next phase and go back to work. See what I'm saying? Well, what's going on is the tyrants, the people that have no respect for civil rights, like people like Joe Biden and people like Gavin Mussolini. That's why I call him, because he's acting like Mussolini. If he acts like one, he's a Mussolini. And they have no respect for our rights. They don't even understand the concept of the Constitution or any of that. They just dictate things. They don't ask the Congress to please confirm my decisions or anything. He didn't ask anybody's opinion. He just made the decision arbitrarily. So anyway, they did all this stuff, and I saw that this is going to be a disaster. And immediately, I said, this is a total disaster. And then I said, why are we doing this again? And so I did research. I wanted to find out why we're doing this. And then I found out the CDC was saying that we're going to have this really big bump here, and we don't know how many people are going to die. It could be 5%, 4%, 3%, 10%. We don't know the numbers of deaths or people that are going to be in. The most important really thing is how many people are going to be in intensive care needing a ventilator. And so what happened was they put everybody on ventilators at COVID-19, and it didn't need to be done. So they came up with better treatment. Okay, this is the list of things. Ever since then, we've come up with better treatment options. Some are being suppressed by the media because they're tyrants and they're evil and they want to get rid of our fleet. They wanted us. These are people that are our enemy, not our friend. Okay, the media is largely made up of people that are evil. Okay, and they want America destroyed. So they want us to not know about treatments. So they're suppressing treatments. There's treatment options out there that are better. They can save a lot of lives. There is the numbers are coming out showing that only 0.1% to 0.3%, like less than 0.5% of the people that get COVID-19, they're diagnosed with it, actually end up getting a fatality. And there's a large number of people, I think about 10% of the people that get COVID-19 end up in ICU. And no, that couldn't be right, because it's like more like 3% or something. Anyway, I get, they're so confusing because every time I look at the numbers, it's different. There's no rule. It's not solid. Anyway, we're getting an idea that it's not quite as deadly as we thought it was. It's still more deadly than the flu. It's still really bad if you get it really bad. It's just horrible. I've heard the nightmare stories. I also question some of that, though, because are they taking certain medication? I think you should take a lot of zinc if you're gonna get this. Zinc is really good at killing viruses. I've been taking airborne for years. And so I've got a few more minutes here. And so, yeah, they found better treatments. It has pretty much maxed out. It didn't really have, only in certain areas did it have a big impact as far as overburdening the medical system. And so none of that is being taken into consideration in the decision making right now. Instead, what they're saying is we need to continue testing to see how many people are dying of it, and until there are nobody dying of it, then or vaccine comes out, we come up with the final solution of vaccines or nobody dying, then we'll open up everything. That's never going to happen because they already flattened the curve. See what I mean? I'm trying to explain this. They're already kind of flattened the curve. And when they did that, they're prolonging the timeline of when people die. It's kind of like, let's put this, let me just give a rough estimate. I'm being really honest here, I swear. Okay, let's say we did nothing and it went like this and like that. And then let's say we had 250, no, 500,000 deaths. 500,000 people died because we didn't do diddly squat. Nobody did any social distancing. We just kept partying, kept going to bars, kept going to concerts, and just ignored it. It's okay. And it's only a small amount of people, that get killed. It's only 500,000. We've got 350 million people here, so no big deal, right? That's pretty crazy. But let's say we did that. Okay. So these people go to the hospital, they'd be overstaffed, so you have a bunch of people dying. We don't have all that information, so you have people dying. We'd have mayhem, just people sick everywhere and just mayhem and stuff. And so a lot of people die because of that. So that's good that we didn't do that, right? So we did kind of flatten the curve out. But the problem we have, because we flattened the curve, it's given us time to come up with a solution. We're going, okay, now we know what we're doing. Okay, now we got an idea how to treat this, and we know that it's not as bad as we thought it was, and we know it's regional. It's worse in this area than other. These areas are not getting hit. These areas are. Well, hardly any of that's being taken consideration into the decision making. Why? I have a very good reason for that. Because they're tyrants. They have no respect for human rights. So what we need to do is we need to re-examine what a state of emergency is. And what we need to do is when we declare a state of emergency, we need to, if it's national, it has to have a national impact. If it's regional, it has to impact that region. You can't just say, no deaths are tolerable. That's crazy. It has to be balanced. They have to, after they declare, it has to be a period that's a defined period that can be renewed. For example, I can declare a state of emergency, but it only lasts 1 month or maximum 30 days. After that, it has to be approved by Congress. It's the same thing as an act declaring war. If I declare war, then Congress has to, the War Powers Act said, if I declare war, then Congress has to go back and later on decide that. It's the same exact reasons why we have this state of emergency, because you can't just go run through the red tape when some country's invading us. If somebody's Cuba decides to invade Florida and want to take over Florida, we have to react immediately. So that's why we have an executive. Okay. And so an executive makes quick decisions, decisive decisions to make sure that we react in time. So that's why you have a state of emergency. Let's react quickly. Let's overrule all the red tape that we've got and quickly solve a problem. Boom, boom, boom. Then 30 days later, you have Congress approve all the different things, and you have a discussion during those 30 days if we need to continue in this state of emergency. We had none of that. And this, what I'm telling you, makes so much sense. If you don't agree with me, I really question your sanity, or perhaps you're infected with this hysteria that's going around that Dr. Fauci and all these tyrants caused, that have no respect for your human rights, that never mention the Constitution. They never apologize to you for, I'm sorry for imposing these terrible restrictions. They are just sitting there going, I love it, because they have the control over you and they have money. They don't have to suffer the consequences. You think you're secure in your job, you're not. You think, oh, I'm good. I'm good. No, you're not. I don't care what your job is. You're not secure. Okay, you could lose your job. And so this is a total violation of our human rights. And we need to, once this is over, or during the course of this, we need to debate this. We need to discuss this. We need to talk to our Congress people and tell them we need to be in charge of this country now because you guys screwed up majorly. See what I'm saying?